Just a few hours ago, the Arizona Republic gave us a huge update on the potential Trump stimulus checks. Let's take a look at what they wrote. The article is called "What is Happening with the DOGE Stimulus Checks?" Here's the latest news on the dividends. Before we go there, I want to thank this video sponsor. It's Chapter, which is a Medicare advisor that advocates for you, not for the insurance companies. More on Chapter in a little bit, but let's jump into the article. Okay, the DOGE stimulus checks may be getting closer to reality rather than just a viral suggestion, according to recent interviews with the CEO who floated the idea. Okay, the man who suggested the idea of the stimulus checks told News Nation that he's optimistic a bill is forthcoming, and that individual is Azoria investment firm CEO James Fishback. And Fishback told News Nation that he had meetings with House and Senate lawmakers to discuss the bill and that it would be introduced soon. So that's the good news. But the decision to send a check does not rest solely in Trump's hand. Congress would have to approve the proposal before any form of stimulus payment could be issued by the federal government. And some lawmakers have pushed back against the idea of a stimulus check, saying that the top priority should be paying down the national debt with the money that DOGE saves. And Musk has indicated that it may not be possible to save the required amount to make the stimulus checks possible. And if it does happen, it might take longer than expected. Okay, so why do I think we might actually get these stimulus checks? Now, my channel is not political, and I'm not saying this is a good idea, but I think there's a chance we're going to get these stimulus checks. And let me tell you why. But before I do, I want to circle back to this video sponsor, Chapter, who is a Medicare advisor that puts your interest in front of the commissions that Medicare advisors get from the insurance companies. Now, they have reassembled all of the data for the various insurance plans, and they have pledged to put your interest in front of the insurance company's interest, which is why I agreed to partner with them. You can find out more about Chapter by calling this phone number up here or by visiting this link here. Thank you, Chapter, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so why do I think that this may happen? The reason I think that the stimulus checks may happen is because they've happened before with when a tariff was put into place. In this case, just to the farmers that were immediately and pretty significantly impacted by the Trump tariffs that were put in place in President Trump's first term. This is from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it's the USDA announces details of a support package for farmers. And the article says that the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, who back then was Sonny Perdue, today announced further details of the $16 billion package aimed at supporting the American agricultural producers while the administration continues to work on free, fair, and reciprocal trade deals. So Trump has said, as I record this, it's several days after the State of Union address, and President Trump stated that there may be some short-term pain. I agree with that. I think it would be very unlikely if there's not short-term pain. And one of the things that Trump has done in the past is said, how do we eliminate this pain for Americans? So do I think a stimulus check could be coming? I do. And I do think it might be independent of whether or not the DOGE savings amount to enough to justify the checks. The CEO that suggested it originally suggested that 20% of the money goes back to individuals in the form of a stimulus check. But I think it's possible that the government looks at this and says, okay, we're putting the most restrictive tariffs on place in a long, long time, probably since the Great Depression. And so the government's looking at that and how do they help us avoid the pain? How do they help us avoid a recession? Because these tariffs, the impact is going to result in likely rising prices. It's hard to imagine that they won't. And the other thing is, we know even with tariffs in place, it doesn't mean that the stock market is going to go down. It doesn't mean that the economy is going to enter a recession. Remember, President Trump has put these tariffs in place before, not as broadly as what we're talking now, but in 2019, when the tariffs were announced on China, many very smart people said, hey, this is going to put the country in a recession. This is going to impact the economy. This is going to impact the stock market. And data that has come out in the 6 years since that happened said, yes, indeed, it did slow down the economy, but the economy still remained robust, still remained in a growth mode. And in fact, that year in the stock market, the S&P 500 was up almost 30% in 2019. That's a big, big return. So we may not need these stimulus checks, but I do think that President Trump is open to the idea of a stimulus check like this, just like he supported the farmers in 2019 to help them weather the storm. The reality is the average American, if you look at the median household income, while over time since the 1980s till now, the chart has gone up nicely from lower left to the upper right hand side, which is what we want. But unfortunately, since the pandemic, that number's actually come down. It peaked out about a median household income of about $78,000 per household. So if there's two people working in a house, that would be both of the households. It peaked out in about 2019 at about $78,000. And now it's dropped on an inflation adjusted basis to $74,000. So that's a $4,000 decrease of our purchasing power over the last 5 or 6 years. That's a big, big move. Over half of all American families unfortunately, do not save a dime. And so when you couple that with rising grocery costs, when you couple that with increased costs because of these tariffs, I think that President Trump might be willing to do a stimulus package in order to bypass the pain of a potential recession coming. We know that the American public in general, there was a survey done and over 50% of Americans say yes, they like the idea of a stimulus check. Now, of course, we like the idea of a stimulus check because it puts more money in our pocket. But at some point, we have to look at the debt and we have to start paying down the debt. Now, the United States is in a very favorable position from the standpoint that our currency, the US dollar, is the reserve currency for the world. And so when you have the amount of debt that we have, which as it stands right now is about 1 times GDP, for most countries, that'd be a huge warning sign. It may be a huge warning sign for us as well. Right now, the US debt is about $100,000 per man, woman, and child. And boy, that doesn't seem sustainable to me. If you assume a 5% interest rate, that is $20,000 per family of 4 just to pay the interest on it. So there's a lot of things to balance here. Do I think a stimulus check is going to happen? I don't know. Nobody knows. But I do think the discussion is going to take place. And if it's needed to avoid a recession, I think there's a decent chance that it could happen. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube says you'll enjoy this next video of mine. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.